Coming up on this edition of Pinpoint Weather University, we're talking about the Winter Olympics. There's a concern there. Are the Winter Olympics in jeopardy as the Earth continues to warm up? That's melting more of our natural snow and also leading to concerns for the athletes that participate in the Olympics. Plus, the drought continues to get worse here in the Carolinas. We did get a little bit of rain over the weekend, but did that rain really help put a dent in the drought? We'll talk about just how much rain we need in 1 month to end the drought conditions. Welcome into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Hopefully you enjoyed our new intro this week. Got all our meteorologists now on the intro. I like to say it's a new vibe, new style, and still the same midweek weather wisdom here on Pinpoint Weather University. We are on Queen City News Plus. Also, a big shout out to our YouTube viewers, Facebook viewers as well, and even some that have been seeing some of our Instagram reels. We appreciate all the support you guys are bringing us, not only on this show for Queen City News Plus, but all of our other originals that we have as well. Got a lot to talk about here on this edition of Pinpoint Weather University. We're going to be talking about the Winter Olympics and a warmer world, talking about just how significant the warming Earth is creating impacts to the Winter Olympics and how much it could change the Winter Olympics in the years to come. So we'll be discussing that. Also going to be talking about our drought as well and just how much rain we need to overcome the drought coming up towards the end of the show. But the Winter Olympics, they've been ongoing. We've got the closing ceremonies coming up this weekend. The USA doing pretty good. This is probably the most excited I've been about the Winter Olympics in my life. I'm not a skier. I'm not real crazy about snowboarding. I think it kind of scares me a little bit. So seeing images like that, them up in the air, just them plowing through the snow with their skis, it makes me nervous, but they do such an incredible job. I think this year I was really, really brought on by it with the Lindsey Vonn story, just seeing her come back from injury with the torn ACL. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way I think everybody wanted it to end here in the USA, rooting her on. She ended up getting hurt, breaking her leg. But I think that really got me into it, just seeing her push through. And I got to watch that all through that weekend. And then I was like, let me watch the other stuff, the bobsledding. Some of the racetrack ones are just thrilling, especially as a NASCAR fan, just seeing them go at those fast paces. So really exciting to see the Winter Olympics on. And obviously they'll be here in America, Salt Lake City in 2034 too. So should be fun to have them here in the USA. So we'll go ahead and talk about why there's a lot of concerns with the Winter Olympics, and it has to do with our warming temperatures. As the temperatures warm up, we're using more artificial snow for these outdoor events, and artificial snow, that leads to more of a concern because it can lead to icier surfaces, and it can also lead to faster conditions for these skiers and snowboarders, and that just creates more danger for the athletes, and that can change the reliability, the safety and fairness of these winter games. So I'm bringing in Shel Winkley now, meteorologist with Climate Central, nonprofit group studying climate change, not only here in America, but all around the world. And Shel, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on with us. We'll go ahead and get just started with this. You guys actually had some research out about Cortina and looking at the northern Italy region where this year's Olympics are taking place. And your research is showing some pretty scary concerns as we go over the next couple of decades, and the fact that we might have less host cities to have these games in. Just how dire is this warming situation for the Winter Olympics?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having us once again. Can we pause for a second? When you said the word scary, I think that I've never paid attention. The skeleton, that blows my mind. We decided to go from a bobsled to a luge to now going headfirst down this icy path. That's the one that's caught my attention the most here for the Winter Olympics. This is so fast and just feels like you're so exposed to everything around you.
I don't know how they do it. Their bodies, the way they're ripping their bodies around and moving around. I mean, I have no clue how they're able to pull that off. I love the thrill of it, but man, I wouldn't do it.
Happy to see it from the comfort of my couch. Yeah.
That's
so
right.
What we did is we wanted to understand, the Winter Olympics is a beloved event. It's a thing that families come together, friends come together, people want to see. So we really wanted to understand, in our warming world due to climate change, how much more likely are warmer temperatures and what do future games look like, because we know the Winter Olympics now are not the same Winter Olympics from just a couple decades ago. So what we really wanted to look at specifically were those outdoor games. So we really dialed into Cortina specifically, and we found that in February. So we went from the last time Cortina held the Winter Games, which was 1956, 70 years ago. We know that in the month of February, when these Winter Games occur, the average temperature has warmed by 6.3 degrees Fahrenheit, or 6.4 degrees Fahrenheit, rather. And so what that shows us is that there is a warming climate. Now, you turned on your TV, you saw that the games were still able to happen. But what I think is really interesting is that this trend is really pushing temperatures closer to that freeze melt line. If you looked at the pictures of some of the spectators, they came ready for cold winter weather. A lot of them were in light long sleeves and without gloves because it wasn't as bitterly cold as what you would expect in February in northern Italy. And when you look at the temperatures that were occurring just over the past couple of weeks, the game started with the heavy snow, but then there was a lot of melting. We understand that the temperatures that were being felt in both Milan and Cortina both had a fingerprint of climate change to them as the Winter Olympic Games were happening. Now, still viable to host those games, but getting us closer to that 32-degree threshold, which is so important to be able to not only make the snow, but also keep that snowpack deep enough. You mentioned things like fairness and safety for the athletes. That's what we're really focused on.
Yeah, and then you think about just the different types of snow that we have, the wetter snows and even the potential for rain. How much does that play a role when it comes down to the Winter Olympic Games?
Yeah, so we've seen it, this isn't the first one that we've seen. We've seen a lot of winter games rely on artificial snow in Sochi. Most of that snow, if not all of it, was artificial. This year, over 3 million cubic yards of artificial snow had to be made in order to host these outdoor games. And when it's nice to maybe add a little bit of cushion, but when you need to do that for all of the snow, that's where that changes the way the courses run and the tracks run. It's a way that we know that snow's a little harder, and so injuries can happen more. But above all that, we talk about climate change, we talk about the things that go into it, which is burning coal, oil, and methane gas. In order to make that artificial snow, we're using a lot of water resources and we're losing a lot of energy in order to make sure that we have that snow for the games.
And then looking just at the Olympics itself, we know some games have moved indoors already, 1980s, curling, figure skating, and also I believe, bobsledding, I guess would be the other sport that has moved indoors. And with some of those sports moving indoors, are there the concern for maybe more outdoor Winter Olympic sports that have to go indoors as well?
Yeah, so there's going to have to be mitigation that happens, an adaptation, right? So that could look like moving indoors, but that also could look like, moving the games in general, moving the games from a February to maybe a January when you can have a more reliable cold winter air. That maybe makes it possible for the games. So we were looking at the future viability, and we really just kind of broke down a 2024 study. And what we know is that out of 93 potential host cities and cities that have already hosted the game, which, by the way, every single host site that has happened since 1950 has experienced warming on average across those sites, 4.8 degrees on average of warming. Now, right now, here in 2026, of those 93 cities, 87 are still viable to host a winter game. But we know that as we continue, as the emissions continue, by 2050, 52 of those 93 cities will only have the potential to host a winter game. And if we continue under the high emission scenario that we are currently on track for, by 2080, remember, we're looking at 93 potential host city. By 2080, only 4 of those cities will have viable conditions to successfully host a outdoor Winter Olympics games.
Yeah, and then when you're looking at that trend, I mean that is a significant trend, because obviously it doesn't impact us, but it's our kids, our grandkids, and our younger generation that is going to have to deal with that. So how do we get folks that are enjoying the games now to understand what the consequences could be for our future generation?
Yeah, so that's, I think, one of the things about the Winter Olympics, right? It brings us all together. it's a time I mentioned at the beginning. It's a time when families sit down together and watch the games and create those traditions together. So if that's really important to you, or just understanding how the world comes together on these big stages, it actually has a moment where we can all say, yeah, let's do this thing together. If that's really important to you, then this is one of those impacts of climate change. And not to say that it can't be reversed, because remember, I said by 2080, only 4 of 93 cities will be viable under a high emission scenario. So what that means is that if we can stop doing the things that we know are causing climate change, the burning of coal, oil, methane gas, releasing carbon pollution into the atmosphere, which are heat trapping pollution, if we can draw that down, then we have a chance to see our future games still be the games that we know and that we love, not only for our children, but our grandchildren and generations to come after. That's for the Winter Games specifically. A little broader, though, is that we also just leave an Earth that has a reliable winter and a safer future if we can do that as well.
And I was just thinking about another thing too, Shell. We're looking at a lot of these fewer freezing nights just in the Cortina area. They're experiencing, I believe it was 41 less freezing nights compared to what they received when they first started hosting the Olympics back in the 1950s. How much of a role does those freezing nights decreasing play in the concern for safety for the athletes?
Yeah, so think about it there in Charlotte, right? So you have a winter event come through, and then temperatures maybe are below freezing the first night, but then you get warming during the day and things start to melt. And then at night, maybe you get close to freezing, but you don't quite get there. And so what that's going to do is potentially create a slushy condition. So now, you've got to use chemicals that go down on top of that snowpack for the Winter Games in order to keep it frozen. The other side of it is maybe in a normal winter, in a reliable winter, you have temperatures that are well below freezing, as you would expect. And what falls from the sky is snow, which is great for the games. But in a world where we're seeing this temperature trend increase, where we're seeing fewer freezing nights, you have the same weather system comes through with these warmer temperatures, then now there's a chance that this falls as a ice event, like maybe a sleet or a freezing rain, or maybe just a cold liquid rain, which also, if it's just a rain, will melt that snow as well. So again, that's part of that viability for future games, is with these warmer temperatures, we don't necessarily have the reliability that what falls from the sky is going to be snow. And if those temperatures are warm enough, that even then impacts the ability to make artificial snow, because there's a temperature threshold you need there as well.
Yeah, and just one more question just about the Winter Olympics in general. How concerned are you as a meteorologist and a scientist? You've studied this, you're looking at the data, and the data is just showing us what the data is. The data doesn't lie. It tells us what's happening. And when you're looking at those stats, like by the 2050s, nearly half of our host locations are going. 2080s, that gets even lower. How concerned are you for this?
Yeah, so this is a part of the broader picture, right? You can tie it to even what's happening in the West this year. So the Western US, from the Rockies to the Pacific Coast, for the most part, every single site that you look at is having their warmest winter of record and their worst snow drought of record. To tie that back to the Olympics, the US team had to go elsewhere to another country to practice because there was no snow in the United States to actually have that practice, to do the training, to then take you to the Olympic Games. So I think in terms of not just the Olympics, but in terms of winter in general, we know that it's the fastest shrinking season. It is a season that is warming the fastest for a good portion of the eastern US and a large portion of the world. So this plays into that bigger trend of just winter going away, and winter is important. The impacts of winter, or the lack thereof, ripple through the rest of the year. Bringing it back to the Olympics one more time, though, you mentioned that in 2034, the Winter Games are expected to be in Salt Lake City, Utah. We did a report with the former mayor of Salt Lake City. And when asked about those 2034 games, he said that he didn't think that they were going to be possible because he didn't, looking at the trends for Salt Lake City, seeing how climate change has impacted Utah specifically, he doesn't think that there's going to be the right conditions to host the games in 2034 in Salt Lake City.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics could be in jeopardy in 2034?
We've seen a lot of winter recreation and impacts happen in Utah just over the past couple of years. So we already know that winter recreation and winter tourism is already taking a big hit in Utah. Now, does that mean that every single year is going to be a dud when it comes to winter? No, we know that there's other parts of climate change, like a warmer climate and a warmer atmosphere holding more moisture. So with the right weather conditions, you could actually have a pretty blockbuster year still. But what this gets down to, again, is that word reliability. We used to say in Salt Lake City between this month and this month, we knew that it would be snowy. We knew that it would be cold. Sure, you're going to have a little bit of, anomalous weather and days that are a little warmer than average. But for the most part, you have a reliable winter. And I think that's what we're finding, especially this year in the American West, is that reliability is gone. The timeliness of when you can expect winter to start, when the snows to start, and when the snows to end, that's gone. And so it's really more of a gamble now to understand, are we going to have a winter? And for Utah in 2034, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be a winter that can support the games.
All right, Shell, don't go anywhere. We still want to keep you for one more segment here, but we're going to be talking about another sport that could be having an issue when it comes down to the Winter Paralympics. Talk about how they could be in more danger of losing host cities. Coming up here on the other side on Pinpoint Weather University. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson, still joined by Shell Wankley from Climate Central, meteorologist at the nonprofit group Climate Central there, and they continue to research good things. You guys do incredible work over there, Shell. I love studying some of the work that you guys have done, not only telling us how climate change is impacting our daily lives, but how it could impact our future generations as well. And we've been talking about the Winter Olympics, but we also have the Winter Paralympics that are in March, and there's some bigger concerns when it comes down to the Paralympics with it being in a warmer month, correct?
Yeah. So if you think about, we have these concerns in the month of February, then what does it mean in March when we're starting to trend a little bit closer to spring? And this isn't just a Northern Italy issue, but we understand that, winter is shrinking because we're seeing the temperatures start later. So those warmer fall temperatures are eating into the beginning of the season, but the spring-like temperatures are eating into the end of the season as well. So in February, we know that snow depth has decreased by about 6 inches. But when it comes to the Paralympic Games in the month of March, we know that Cortina specifically, so looking at this year's games, Cortina in March has warmed on average by about 4.5 degrees. So if we're already seeing this warming and coming close to that freeze melt line here in the month of February, then when it comes to the Paralympic Games in March, we potentially could be struggling even more because as these temperatures become more consistently above freezing, you get more snow melt, you get unreliable surfaces, and you have the potential that you could have just maybe not even be able to host some of these events because of the conditions that are at hand.
And it has to do with those shorter winters, just looking at just how those winters continue to shrink. And one last question for you, Shell, before we let you go. Obviously, we fed a lot of information to our viewers today, and I just want to kind of sum everything up for them. If you could, just maybe talking about just some of the main hazards that come with warming temperatures for the Winter Olympics and the Paralympics.
Yeah, so we talked about this 2024 study. And one thing I think that's worth mentioning too, with a high emission scenario by 2080, only 4 of 93 potential cities will be able to host the Olympics. Under that same situation, virtually none of those 93 locations can host a Paralympic game. 94%. So part of the study was talking to coaches and athletes. 94% of the coaches and athletes that were asked about climate change and the Winter Games were concerned. They were concerned about the safety of the course, not getting injured, the fairness of the games. You mentioned how some of that artificial snow can make things even faster when it comes to the times for those races. And then just, the ability to host those games. So this is one of those things where when we talk about climate change, we really want to understand, how does this impact us, right? It's a big problem. And we talk about this being a global issue. So this is really helping us frame down to understand things that we love. And that's the Winter Olympics. That's the games that bring the world together. And so we understand that if we like the games, if this is something that we value, then this is one of those reasons to really tackle climate change and to work on those solutions so that hopefully we can continue watching this decades to come.
Shell Wankley with Climate Central, meteorologist there, continuing to do great things in climate change research and not scaring the public, but just letting the public know what they need to know about climate change, educating the public. We talk about it all the time, Shell. The conversations are the big part. Having conversations about it, talking about it, that's the best way we can start moving forward when it comes down to reducing carbon emissions and also trying to reduce the warming pattern that we're on when it comes down to our Mother Earth. Shell, anything else you want to mention before I let you go?
No, I think you kind of summed it up great. I always say that the very first solution to climate change is conversation and communication. So while you're sitting there and you're watching the games, just bring it up. I think you'd be surprised how many people are interested to understand what you learned today, to also hear that and then have those conversations with you.
Shell Wankley, Climate Central. Shell, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Coming up after the break, we've got a drought to figure out here in the Carolinas. We got a little bit of rain over the weekend, but not enough to curb the drought. We'll talk about just how much rain we need to get rid of the significant drought we're under here in the Carolinas. Coming up on the other side. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson here on Queen City News Plus. Great conversation there with Shell Wankley. Always want to thank him for coming on the show with us and showing not only his support for Pinpoint Weather University, but also give us some good education when it comes down to climate change and how it's impacting our everyday lives. And I do want to talk about something else that's impacting us here in the Carolinas. It's going a little bit overshadowed, I feel like, because it's the winter months when we use less water. But we're talking about the drought. The drought is significant over our region. I want to go ahead and pop it up for you. This is a look at the latest drought monitor from the United States Geological Survey. It has that red there. That is a level 4 out of 5 drought over parts of the Carolinas, especially east of I-77. And then you see the red kind of creeping into York and Chester County, the western portions there. That's over the Greenville-Spartanburg area quite heavily. So we need rain, and a lot of it. A lot of folks were excited about the rain we saw over the weekend. We need a lot more than that. And let me show you why. In order to curb the drought that we're in now, just in Charlotte and the Mecklenburg County region, we would need 9 to 10 inches of rain in 30 days. So you need 9 to 10 inches of rain in 1 month to curb the drought that we're in now. So I like to compare a drought to a credit card. A credit card, droughts don't start overnight and they don't end overnight either. So a credit card, you're not going to pay off a credit card overnight. You're going to take goals and steps at it. You're going to, get your monthly bill paid, maybe pay a little bit more than your monthly bill at times, but you're not going to pay it off overnight. You're not going to end it usually in 1 month, especially if you're going on a term, right? Or maybe even like a lease term or you're renting an apartment complex. You're not going to pay the whole thing off. You're going to pay it month by month. Sometimes you might pay more than that. And that's kind of how Mother Nature works too. We might get more rain than what we need 1 month. We might get more rain than what we need in 1 day. We might get more rain than what we need in 2 weeks. Any extra bit of rain helps, just like any extra payment to your credit card or your loan or whatever helps. It helps your credit score. Any extra rain will help our drought score. Let's just say it like that. So again, we need more rain. We're going to be getting some as we go throughout the weekend and also possibly in the early next week as well. Anything helps, but this 9 to 10 inches isn't going to come overnight. And we're going to have to continue to push forward when it comes down to rain chances, because again, if we do go into the spring season with a significant drought like this, that's going to lead to maybe delays of crop growth. Farmers will start being concerned maybe about cattle because they have to get the grass grown for the hay, for their feed. So it's just some things to think about, maybe even some conserving of water as well. You might have businesses like Charlotte Water. I'm not saying Charlotte Water is going to do this, but just an example of a water company that might be asking residents to maybe voluntarily conserve some water. But again, that's down the line as we get towards March. Hopefully we can get some rain and we don't have to worry about that situation as we get into the spring season. I am meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Really enjoyed today's conversation. Always enjoy talking about the Winter Olympics, but I also like to talk about the concerns that we do have as we're moving forward. 2050, again, by 2050, maybe 44% of host cities could be eliminated from the Winter Olympics due to the reliability of them with warmer temperatures being lowered. And then you have the concern in 2080 where it can get even worse than that. So it's not just about us that are living on Earth now, but also our future generation as well. As I end the show, always take care of yourself and each other as we navigate this Earth together. We'll see you next time on Pinpoint Weather University.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.